It was around 2013 to 2014. My brother was about 7 or 8 at the time, and we had just moved into a new house to be closer to school, and for cheaper rents, it was a pretty nice house. All things considered, it even had a cozy fireplace for the winter. Anyway, my brother was really into Batman, and had this Batman car that, if a button was pressed, made noises and lit up. It was basically his favorite toy, so he played with it often. Then, one afternoon, he came inside from playing out back and told us he found something. So obviously, my mom and I asked what it was. It was a picture of a young boy in the form of one of those tags you get. If your parents paid extra for school photos, the picture was dirty and full of wear and tear even. To the point you couldn't see the year it was taken. We thought that, okay, some parent lost their kid's picture, no big deal. And then my brother said something that confused me. "That's Buddy," he said, and I looked at him with a facial expression that basically asked him to repeat himself. And he did. He pointed at the picture and said, "This is Buddy, he's my friend." I slowly nodded my head as if I knew who he was talking about. The main reason this confused me is because my brother didn't make friends easily, and he had no friends that I knew of. And this Buddy only came up once we had moved. I shrugged it off and figured he'd made friends with the next-door neighbors or something, and he somehow got the school picture as like a keepsake that night around 3 a.m. when everyone in the house was asleep. I woke up to my brother talking. So naturally annoyed, I walked into his room to tell him to go to bed, or else he'd wake up our parents. It was weird because when I walked into his room, he was sitting up straight in his bed, as if he was actually talking to someone, and not just to himself or his toys. I told him to go to bed, and I went to bed myself. A couple days later, my mom was talking to me about my brother and asked if I'd seen him get up at night, and I said no, I woke up to him talking a few nights ago, but that was it. Why? And she said he had been acting weird, but as usual, we both shrugged it off. As him being a kid now, in my room, my bed was right across from my door, meaning if I turned over, I could see into the hallway right in front of me. One night I woke up to use the bathroom, and since I myself was, and still, I'm very afraid of the dark. I left the hallway light on, knowing my dad would turn it off once he got up, and I'd probably be asleep by then. I was laying in my bed, facing my door, when a sudden noise made me jump. It was my brother's damn Batman car who was making noises, so I got up to tell my brother that he shouldn't be up this late playing. But when I got into his room, he was asleep in his bed. With a toy across the room on the floor, still making noise, I walked over to it to turn it off. I was finally able to go back to sleep, but the following days my brother would not shut up about Buddy. It was honestly starting to freak me out, so I went over to the neighbors' houses to the right and left of us. One house didn't even have kids, and the other was vacant. This started to worry me, but my dad said it was probably just an imaginary friend he came up with. I went along with it since I couldn't think of any other solution. But almost every night, one of us, my mom, dad, or sister, would say we heard my brother's toy making noise and had to go into the room and turn it off. I explained that I had to do it as well, and once again brought up my brother talking to someone one night. My dad swore up and down that the toy was probably motion activated. But when we bought it, there was no advertisement for motion activation. My sister and I were so unnerved by it that we started to sleep in my room together, which I'm glad we did, or else I'd probably write this off as a bad dream. My sister and I were talking, trying to keep each other calm and in good spirits until we heard the dreaded noise of my brother's toy. We both looked toward my open door and into my brother's room, which was right across mine into his room. Our expressions turned into those of horror as we saw our brother's toy rolling past the door all on its own. We screamed, and ran to our parents' room, and they got mad at our brother, saying it was a cruel joke to play on us, as we were already freaked out. What he said sent chills down my spine. It wasn't me, Bud, he wanted to play that night. The toy went into the trash batteries taken out, and all my sister and I were relieved. Until the next day, my brother had the toy again. My parents accused him of getting it out of the trash, to which he responded, "Buddy got it for me." The toy was broken into small pieces and thrown away for the final time. My brother was obviously upset, but our parents got him a new Batman figurine, and everything was fine. It wasn't until about a week later, when we all felt that everything was okay now and that Buddy was gone. My mom was cooking chicken breasts on the countertop, George Foreman grill, and she had come into the living room to ask us something, and then we all jumped. As we heard a crash in the kitchen, we went in there to see the George Foreman grill halfway across the kitchen, as if it had been thrown. My mom swore it was nowhere near the edge, and my dad had no explanations. Nothing happened afterwards, and we moved out about a year later, but to this day I wonder if my brother's imaginary friend Buddy wasn't. This happened when I was a young child, maybe like 8 years old. My parents had me late. My 2 older siblings are both at least 10 years older than me. I was woken up in the middle of the night to a commotion from downstairs. One night it was my parents. I cracked my door open and heard my parents freaking out about something. Something I wasn't sure what it was. I went to the stairway and stood at the top, calling down, "Mom." "Dad," my mom came to the bottom of the stairs and said to me, "Go back to bed." I listened without asking any questions. I could tell they were stressed about something, though I was trying to go back to sleep when I heard the front door downstairs slam shut, and then it was dead silence. I presumed they left the house, but I wasn't sure why. Either way, I listened to my mom and went back to sleep. I woke up again to sounds downstairs once more. It was the sound of the front door closing, and then footsteps, but no talking. Naturally, I assumed they were back home and just being quiet. So that they wouldn't wake me up, I heard occasional steps and thuds from downstairs. I heard drawers and cabinets being opened and closed, and I thought for sure I heard the fridge opening too. I thought it was my older brother Chris, who's 10 years older than me, and at the time he was already driving, so he was going out and coming home late. So him getting home at like 2 a.m. and rummaging the fridge wasn't abnormal at all. These are all things I was telling myself, logical explanations as to what I was hearing. Eventually, I heard footsteps coming up the stairs, getting louder and closer, until they reached the top and then made their way first thing to my door. My door quietly and slowly opened. I didn't sit up or move, I just had my eyes open facing the door as I was still laying down. There weren't any lights on outside of my room. Whoever was walking around was doing so in the dark. So all I saw was this black mass at my doorway, resembling the shape of someone's head. I said every name starting from Chris to Mom to Dad. Then I just said, "Who's there?" They didn't reply. They just closed the door, and I was left there confused, but mildly creeped out. I heard footsteps going downstairs. I was convinced it was my dad. Now just coming to check on me after getting home, though. I wasn't sure why he was ignoring me. I didn't hear anything from downstairs for a while now. I allowed curiosity to get the better of me, and I went downstairs in the dark. I kept all the lights off as I was approaching the kitchen, and I froze at the doorway, noticing a tall figure standing right in the middle of the kitchen. I said Dad, assuming it was him just based off the size of this person. A deep voice said, "Go back upstairs." I ran back up the stairs to my room and closed the door and jumped under the covers. All I was thinking was, why did my dad's voice sound like that? The reality of a stranger being in the house didn't dawn on my innocent little mind. Not until a little later when I heard the front door opening and a commotion from downstairs again, the voices of my parents. I went to the top of the stairway again, and they were shocked to see I was still awake. I asked what happened. They told me that Chris had a little accident, but that he was going to be fine. I found out, a month later, that he had gotten into a car accident, driving in a condition that he shouldn't have been driving in. My parents got a call from the hospital, and so they rushed to see him first thing, leaving me to sleep. I asked my dad if he had come in my room before, and that was when I learned that they had been gone for hours. My mom started freaking out, yelling at my dad because he had neglected to lock the door when they rushed out of the house. Me telling my parents about the person at my bedroom door and in the kitchen caused my dad to search the house with his gun and my mom to call the police. The last thing I really remember was being asked by a police officer to give my story. My parents tell me that they felt like morons having to explain to the cops that they left me alone and left the door unlocked. I don't think anything of value was stolen, even though whoever broke into the house clearly didn't have intentions of harming me. Having a complete stranger in your house is already a terrifying ordeal. Now, imagine going through that at 8 years old